Hello and welcome to the 11. I'm William Pitts. Thanks for watching on the 12 News streaming app and hopefully on YouTube. We were recently on YouTube. It's kind of fun that way. All right, if you're new to this show, this is the show where we don't actually just tell you about the news. We tell you what the news means to you. We go in a little bit more depth into it and tell you what's going on. But we're going to start off with a segment we call Desk Check. And as such, let's bring in Dan Siegel from our assignment desk over there to tell us the three things that we are looking at over the assignment desk today. Dan, what's first?
You bet. We've been chasing weather all morning. We had Tori King and a couple of photographers start off in East Valley, work their way towards Sky Harbor and into the West Valley. The rain this morning, pretty nice to have some rain, cooler temperatures and all of that. We're in extreme heat. We got the weather impact alert for a few days, so a little rain is a nice break. We also had a couple of house fires, though. We're trying to figure out if they were sparked by lightning. One was in Mesa, one was in Central Phoenix. We have video of both of those. Nino, the homeowners, wanted to talk to us. We're trying to see what those backstories were.
And those kind of came out around the time of weather, right?
Yeah, it was all in the 6 a.m.-ish hour, plus or minus. They were both roof fires or attic fires, so it lends itself to making sense that it would be a lightning strike at that time of day. So we'll see how those play out with the fire investigators. And then there was a train derailment in Mesa this morning, caused some traffic issues. There were 3 cars that were wobbled off the tracks, but no hazmat component. Nothing super dangerous in that sense, but just a traffic mess. So.
Yeah, as I understand it, it was kind of a minor train derailment, and I see Dan's camera is frozen, but we can still hear Dan, so that's even better. But I know it's kind of a minor traffic incident. You know, derailment is never great, but you know, they at least got it cleaned up fairly quickly. All right, so first, even though your shot is still frozen, where exactly was that train derailment again?
It was not far off Main Street and McDonald. It was Broadway and Center, in that sort of that mid-Mesa area.
Gotcha. All right, we'll have more coming up.
I am moving, just so you know, I am moving for real in real life. I'm not moving on the screen.
You are still there. You are not just the disembodied voice. All right, thanks, Dan. Sure. We'll have more on that coming up. 12 News at 1, 12 News at 4, 5, and 6 with all the details involved in that. All right, so let's get out of our desk check and go to our one big story of the day. All right, our big story of the day is going to be the Super El Nino that is coming. And okay, Randy Cervity with ASU, meteorologist extraordinaire, meteorologist to the stars, most likely. You are following this El Nino. We know El Nino, it comes up a lot, right? What exactly is an El Nino?
El Nino is part of a big change that takes place in the Pacific Ocean. I tell my students that you can kind of think of the Pacific Ocean like a giant bathtub, that most of the time the water comes up from Antarctica along the west coast of South America and then pushes across the Pacific Ocean over towards Australia. That happens about every 5 to 6 years. The 7th year or 8th year is when it surges all the way back. The warm waters off of Australia move back towards South America. And when that happens, it's usually a short-term event, it causes massive changes in the jet stream and in the weather across the entire planet.
So when we're talking about the reason for that, you heat up the ocean evaporates more, water vapor becomes clouds?
Right. And when you change the temperature patterns across the Pacific Ocean, what happens is that it tugs in different ways on the jet stream. So the path of storms changes pretty dramatically. And that can cause changes in terms of even like the number of hurricanes. That this year we're not going to have very many hurricanes in the Atlantic Ocean, but we're going to have a tremendous amount. In fact, we've got a huge one that's going on out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean right now.
I've read that is going to be the case. We kind of flip-flop hurricane season a little bit. And I was thinking about this morning because we had storms rolling overnight, and we're talking about a hurricane that's forming down there right now. Whenever one of those happens and it hits Mexico and we get the remnants, we just get hammered with rain.
And that's the big thing about El Nino is the changes that we have, that moisture surge that we have that comes up through the Gulf of California and off the Pacific Ocean, really causes the potential for a lot of precipitation around the Southwest. It is what the people that are looking at our drought love, because this amount of moisture could have a huge impact on the entire Southwest's water supply.
So I want to talk about drought also, because we'll get to drought actually in just a second, because we need to clarify that El Nino usually it's a rainmaker, but it's not giant. It's not, outside of the realm of possibility. This one, though, is looking like it's going to be huge.
Huge, and part of that is seen in the fact that it's starting now. El Nino is named after, it's Spanish for the child, and it refers to Christmas time. And that's normally when we start to see El Nino. To have it starting here in July is something that is kind of unprecedented at this kind of strength.
So we're talking about, and I was looking up some of the numbers here, we are talking about this chunk of the ocean. We see 2 degrees C in a change. They're talking, what are they talking now, 3 to 6?
Yeah, and normally variations in the Pacific temperatures range plus or minus about 2 degrees Celsius, about 4 to 5 degrees of Fahrenheit. What we're going to see is something that is substantially over that. And what that means is that we're not only going to have precipitation from the storms that are going to come through in the monsoon, we're going to see storms coming through as a result of hurricanes in the fall, and we're probably going to see storms coming through the Southwest even into next year. The Climate Prediction Center is actually going with rainfall that is going to extend above normal for our area all the way to next May. So
next May.
That's looking really good for our drought situation.
Okay, but here's the quirk, though. It doesn't necessarily mean a colder winter, does it?
No.
So we might have a wet winter, no snow, a lot of rain.
Right.
Not cold.
Right, and in fact, that's often what happens with El Nino winters, is that since the moisture is coming up from the south, the storms tend to be kind of warm, and so it may not result in a lot of snow cover, but we could have periods where we're going to have drizzly, overcast days for several weeks at a time.
Okay, when was the last time that we had an El Nino even approaching a size like this?
You probably have to go back to 98, 99, or even all the way back to 1982. 82, 83 was one of the really biggest ones. We usually give it as a 2-year type of thing because it usually is seen in the fall and then extends on into the springtime. So we started in 1982 and went into 1983. That was one where we even saw massive flash flooding going on in Salt Lake City. There's historical images of downtown Salt Lake City just being underwater.
Yeah, hopefully we don't get to that point this year with us.
We're going to get a lot of rain, and how well we can handle that is going to be a good testament to how well we prepared since the big El Ninos that we've had, like back in '98.
Now, I told you that we can go into the weeds on this show just a little bit because we have the time for this. The drier we get with the drought, I mean, that tends to impact how much water the soil can hold, right?
Exactly.
So we may end up having flooding problems because of the drought, even if we get all the rain we want.
Right, and that's particularly true of the first storms that we're going to have. The next storms that we're going to have as we get into August and into September are likely to be the potential for flash flooding. But that's something that we do experience pretty often in monsoon times. It's because we get these temperatures in June of up in the hundreds and the 115 range, and then it dries the soil out. And as you say, it takes a while for that soil to become filled up again. And when the rains hit it, it usually just runs off. Particularly true in the urban areas as well. Because we have so much concrete and asphalt and roads, when those storms hit, there's no place for the water to go, and we'll get flash flooding. So flash flooding in the city actually is more prevalent than it is even in the rural areas.
So to give people an idea here of, okay, last year was not great for monsoon season. It wasn't a fantastic winter. It was actually a really terrible winter in terms of snowpack. What are we going to get? Like a storm a week? Storm a month?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, during the monsoon, everybody kind of expects from hearing stories and such that we get a storm every other day or something like that. Not the way that it works. Monsoons are localized, create localized storms, and usually what happens is we'll have a really good storm, and then it'll shut down for a week or so, and then we'll get another really big storm. So it's not the every night type of thing, although this summer may prove that to be wrong.
We've already had more storms than I remember having last year in the last couple of weeks.
Right. Normally around this particular time, we're in what we call a monsoon break, where we get really hot temperatures, and we will get some hot temperatures over the weekend. But next week is already looking like we're going to have some really big storms coming.
Yeah, nobody said anything about taking a break from monsoon last night, as I was woken up at 3 a.m. by thunder, lightning, rain, and my daughter coming in going, "What is that?" Like, it's storms. Go back to bed, and then I couldn't go back to sleep. It happens. Okay, so monsoon though is kind of a wild card for El Nino, right? We don't really know if El Nino necessarily means it's going to be massively great in terms of rain for August going forward.
2/3 of the time with El Nino, we get substantial rains over the southwest. But 1/3 of the time, the weather patterns don't follow what we would like to predict. If you remember, there were a few years ago, we were thinking it was going to be a really dry winter because we were in the midst of the reverse, which is called La Nina, the girl. And we ended up having a huge wet winter. So Mother Nature does like to play tricks on us. But if I'm a betting man, I'm thinking we're going to have a pretty good fall. We're going to have a pretty good winter in terms of precipitation.
Okay, what parts of the state should be on the lookout for heavy rain, heavy snow, heavy precipitation, something? All of it?
Yeah, over the next...
Yes?
yes. The particular areas that are the greatest threat are going to be along the rim, Flagstaff, that type of thing, because as the moisture comes up, it gets uplifted by the terrain, and that tends to cause a lot of heavy rain downfalls. The same thing happens in the valley. The driest part of the valley traditionally is actually Sky Harbor Airport because it's at the lowest part of the valley. The places like Cave Creek or South Mountain or the area around the valley is actually where we tend to have the most rain because that's where the moisture gets pushed up.
That's of course that's why we complain about having the rain gauge at Sky Harbor. Sky Harbor got nothing. My house, meanwhile, is floating down the street.
Exactly.
And Sky Harbor says it's bone dry.
Right. That's due to the traditional idea that weather stations need to be placed for the aviation community.
And also, you don't want to move it once it's there because that'll mess up all your data for the last 100-something odd years.
Even moving a weather station just a few feet can have some pretty tremendous implications. Back when we hit 122 degrees, our hottest temperature that we've had in the Phoenix metropolitan area, the station was not located where it is today, and it might have been somewhat impacted by moving it away from the runways to where it is currently now.
So I want to show you, I can pull up our radar right here. This is currently right now. I'm not pulling this up to show you storms or anything like that, but the monsoon pattern that we usually get, of course it moves up to Flagstaff. The monsoon pattern that we usually get, though, tends to go southwest-ish. Following the jet stream, it kind of comes south from Mexico, right?
The moisture comes up, but the storms don't necessarily have to.
They just appear.
Very often what will happen is we'll start in the afternoon with thunderstorms building up along the rim, and then gravity actually pulls them down and they'll come in from the northeast and north. A lot of times in the early part of the monsoon season, we'll have storms that are doing kind of like what we're seeing right here. They're moving up from the south.
Gotcha, because we're looking at right here, just a little bit of Gulf of Baja right there and then off to the side. Of course, it'll cycle through and go back to that wide, picture. But we're talking off to the coast of California is where this is coming from.
Right. And then as we move into the fall and into the winter, what will happen is the storms will come in from the west from California. The jet stream back as we move into fall and winter will push those storms across California and then into Arizona.
So we're going to get a warning from California of how bad this could get.
After the monsoon season.
After the monsoon season. Monsoon, all bets are off, as we learned last night when a storm popped up out of nowhere.
One of the things I like to tell my students is monsoon storms are really hard to predict because they're what we call convective. They're based off of hot air. Well, same principle is with a pan of boiling water. Point to me where the first bubble is going to have from boiling water, And you'll see the kind of problem that we have of figuring out where is a convective thunderstorm going to start to build up first, because we don't have the information across the metropolitan area and across the desert Southwest to pinpoint those kind of locations.
Somewhere downstairs in our main weather studio, our weather people are applauding right now, saying, yes, this is why it is so hard to predict, and please don't give me flack about a storm popping up out of nowhere. All right, Randy Cerveny, thank you very much for coming by and explaining El Nino to us, because this is definitely going to be something that will impact us for quite some time. All right, from our big story, we're going to head on to something we call the follow-up, something that didn't get enough attention, and now we're going to look into it. All right, what we're going to talk about on the follow-up right now is two things, actually. And the first one is going to be information about our blood drive well, not blood drive, I should say blood shortage, because there is a nationwide shortage of blood right now. The American Red Cross has declared a national blood supply crisis. Only the second time in history, 145 years of the American Red Cross, that they've declared a national blood supply crisis. Fell to a 4-year summer low. Now, they really need type O positive blood right now. That is the most commonly transfused blood type. And I didn't know this. Apparently, blood supplies go really, really low during the summer, and need goes up because of what they call summer trauma season. It's Memorial Day through Labor Day. You're in the summer, you're doing things outside, you have a more likely chance of doing something that will injure you enough that you're going to need blood transfusion, blood supply, something like that. And it is the lowest time for collection because it's vacation, school's being let out. You have your routines that are disrupted. Regular donors don't necessarily come in during the summer. This year, it's being especially worse because of the extreme heat. People just don't want to go outside. I don't want to go outside in the heat like this. So those blood drives are either being canceled or just donors are being scared off and no one's coming in to donate blood. So please go out and donate some blood if you can. You can call 1-800-RED-CROSS. You can book online at redcrossblood.org. And if you donate by July 31st, apparently you get a Fandango movie ticket up to $15, or you can get a $20 gift card on Amazon if you donate between August 1st and August 31st. All right, so let's go back to the other follow-up that we're going to talk about, because this thing is blowing up all over social media, and that is this speeding ticket that was delivered by a process server that kind of looked like a delivery driver. And Craig Harris had that story yesterday. Craig, this is legal, apparently?
It is legal.
We heard this morning.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is legal. And the person who did it is a third-party vendor who works for the city of Phoenix. And you could dress up as a clown if you wanted to do that. And I mean, if you wanted to dress,
If you want to catch them when they're off guard, dress up as a clown.
Right, but this person, it did not say Amazon, but it sure looked like an Amazon delivery person. Blue vest, blue hat, and there is a motivation for the company. I believe it's called Vera. It's the company. There's a motivation because they get $20 for every ticket that gets paid. So they probably
they're going to be hunting for you.
There is a little bit of hunting. There is more motivation. So if it was left up to the city staff, even I talked to the constables. Here in Arizona, we have an old-fashioned constable system where they go out and they are basically process servers for the government, for the courts. They don't do that. They dress in a very business-like, uniform-like. They know who you are.
They look like constables.
They look like they look like constables.
So
right.
Let's take a look. This is some of the video we're seeing right now is from your story yesterday. So this woman, what was her name?
Her name is Miranda Young.
Miranda. So this is video from her doorbell camera. I assume she admits she got a speeding ticket. She's seen it, right?
She did. She got a speeding ticket, and she admits she was speeding, and she said she's going to pay it. She was just put off a little bit by the cloak and dagger, so to speak, kind of the sneakiness. And this is her right here. And she was very telegenic, as you can see yesterday.
She's doing videos on social media, as I would.
Yes.
If this happened to me.
Yep. She put this on social media, and it kind of exploded. It kind of went viral, and so we picked up on this story, and it's really funny. After we did the story, a few other people contacted us and said, hey, I think this same guy came to my house, looks just like him. So, it does seem to be a way to get out and to deliver those tickets to make sure people are paying. Because once you acknowledge you got the ticket, you're on the hook. So now, not trying to tell someone to break the law, but if you're not served, then you don't have to go.
So you have to be served in person.
Yes.
Just mailing me the ticket is not enough to serve me.
Well, if you decide to pay it, that's on you, but that is not, by the state law, that is not the legal requirement for serving someone. It has to be in person. So if you get it in the mail, it's up to you whether you want to pay that ticket or not. That's why they send the process servers afterwards to say, now you've been served. And once you've been served and they have that, boom, you're responsible for that $250 or more ticket.
So what's the decision between just letting it go and sending a process server to go track you down?
Letting it go, they don't get the money.
90 days?
Well, you have 90 days.
Okay.
But also, if you let it go, if they let it go, then they don't get the money. There is a financial incentive for the company they hired to go out and actually make sure you are paid the ticket. Now, cities, they don't have the time or the money to go after you. You know, they just hope with photo radar, if you get caught, you'll pay it. But true confession, I got a photo radar ticket from the city that I live in, but it said right on the envelope, this is not a ticket. And actually, this was a warning that I got in the city of Tempe. They said, we want you to slow down, so I know from now on I need to slow down when I'm driving in Tempe.
I may or may not have gotten one, maybe two of these things. I've never really looked at the fine print on this thing. I just assumed that was it. You get a speeding ticket in the mail, you got nailed by photo radar, photo red, and you just had to pay the thing. I've never had a process server show up at my door with a speeding ticket like that. But we should say, by the way, part of your package is that the city of Phoenix said this is not supposed to be a revenue generating thing for them.
Yes, they said that.
But it's not for them a revenue generator necessarily, although they make money off it. But that company is making money off this.
That company is making money. They're in the business of doing this. And if you go on their website, they are a publicly traded company here in Mesa, and that is their business. They go out to cities and say, hey, we'll go after these people and we'll collect the money for you. So they may say it's not intended to generate revenue, but if you didn't have these 17 photo radars, and now all of a sudden you do, and you're getting thousands, maybe tens of thousands every month, you multiply that by $250, that could generate some pretty good revenue.
Well, $20 per ticket, yeah. I mean, you have to put forth the effort to go and track these people down. But,
right.
You know, if you showed up and you're just a process server, you're holding the, we've all seen the movies, right? Somebody shows up with the subpoena, and excuse me, sir, you've been served.
Right.
If you just showed up like that, nobody's opening their door, and you have to hand it to them to be served.
Right, and there's also a lot of questions like this woman is a single woman. She lives with another woman. She's not opening her door to anybody. Now, other women or even men, like when I used to work from home, I'm not going to answer my door if I don't know who's there. You never know what's going to happen. So, you know, that's why a lot of people, she caught this on the Ring, and that's how she was able to share this with us. But, you know, it's, unless you actually open that door, you know, you're not being served.
Yeah, and obviously this is a different kind of case. I mean, he does look like a delivery driver.
He looks like a delivery driver from a very famous delivery company.
And you and I were both in a meeting just a little bit ago where we asked Phoenix PD, like, is this legal? Can you, for lack of a better term, impersonate or look just like somebody from a different company? And the response was
absolutely.
Yep.
And actually, they
no logos involved.
No logos involved. And there's like, you need to go talk to the company and how they do it, and it's legal. And I also talked to a constable who said the same thing. Yep, it's legal. We don't do it because the constables don't think it's ethical. They think if you're going to represent the constable in an elected position, you need to represent yourself. It's kind of like when we go out as 12 News. We very rarely do undercover because it's a matter of ethical issues, and we always are told, identify yourself so people know who you're dealing with. But if you're just trying to get someone to pay a ticket, you don't have to do that.
And of course, there has to be a limit. Like, you can't dress up as a police officer and do this. You can't dress up as a person of authority if you're not. That's impersonating a cop. So there's a line somewhere where what you're making yourself out to be to serve
Yeah, there is a line, but there's really no line if you dress up as a delivery truck driver, so you could do that.
Apparently not. All right, Craig Harris, thanks a lot.
You bet.
Appreciate it. This story is kind of going a little bit crazy online on social media, and check it out definitely on our 12 News account there. You'll be able to see this whole thing. All right, so we're going to move from there into my favorite segment, which is really my favorite segment of the day, and that is our One Good Thing. All right, this is one good thing to leave you with your day. And our one good thing comes out of Ohio today. And the Toledo Walleye hockey team. Props if you knew that the Toledo Walleyes existed or were a hockey team. But Bob Vergils is the longtime PA voice of the Toledo Walleye hockey team. And Bob needed a kidney. Apparently the word got out that Bob needed a kidney because people were starting to hit him up. So he is sitting there. This is how this goes. He actually found his donor in the booth right there. So apparently he doesn't really turn around when people are banging on the penalty box, for hockey, because that's what you do at hockey. You're banging on the glass. But he did this one time. And a woman apparently was holding up a phone behind him up to the glass. And the message said, "I hear you need a kidney." And Bob said, "Yeah, come on over." Well, so this woman was not a direct match to Bob, unfortunately. But they did a paired exchange program. This is something that happens in donations quite often. So this woman was a match for someone who was a match to Bob. So it's kind of a double kind of swap system, I guess is what we can call it. So double transplant. So because of that, Bob is going to get his new kidney tomorrow. I had to look for a second. It's July 29th. That's when he gets his new kidney. And he's been with this team for a very long time. Beloved in the Toledo Walleye hockey fan community, apparently. And to give you an idea, this is something that is desperately, desperately needed. 90,000 people, according to Donate Life, close to 90,000 people are waiting for a kidney right now in the U.S. And that is 90,000 out of about 100,000 to 105,000 on the national transplant waiting list. So most people on this list are waiting for kidneys. Something that can be done, something that can be transplanted, but there's just not a lot of them out there. Because the wait time is definitely not months. It is years for a kidney donation. Most people wait, according to the National Kidney Foundation, 3 to 5 years for a donor kidney that's coming from a deceased person, because that's where a lot of these transplants come from. But depending on the patient's immune system, the patient's blood type, the region of the country, it can stretch into 10 years waiting for a kidney transplant. So a national study found that the median kidney wait time was about 4 years in order to get a patient a new kidney and transplant it in. And obviously there are not enough kidneys to go around. The American Kidney Fund says about 13 people every day die waiting for a kidney. So this is why we bring up our one good thing today, because Bob doesn't even know what told him to turn around. Didn't want us to turn around and there's Bob in the booth right there. Didn't want to usually turn around. You're doing your job. You're a PA announcer. You don't need to be distracted by the fans in the hockey arena who are, banging on the glass and shouting messages. We know how it is. We go in the field all the time. You don't really want to, people try to distract you sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for not good reasons. But in this case, it was a very, very good reason. A phone message that said, "I hear you need a kidney." Yep, turn that right around. So the paired exchange program now, of course, Bob, we want to wish a very good luck to, because Bob is getting that new kidney on July 29th. Now, if you want to help out people who are waiting for donations, you can do that as well. Donate Life is one of those organizations that does a lot with transplant. They definitely help register you as an organ donor. And if you're on the organ donor list, that will help a lot of people. We've done a lot of stories over the years here at 12 News about people who have been waiting for organ donations and finally get theirs, sometimes at the last minute. I did a story a couple of years ago about a guy who was waiting for a heart transplant over at the Mayo Clinic, and he was just getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and his heart was failing really by the day, and it kind of came down to the last possible second, and he ended up getting his heart transplant at the last possible minute. So donate life if you'd like to be an organ donor and sign up there. All right, thanks a lot for joining us on this edition of The 11. You can watch us on 12 News at 1, 4, 5, and 6, and of course 12 News at 10. Thanks for watching on the 12 News streaming app. We will be right back here tomorrow at 11 o'clock.